Okay, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about loops. Specifically, we're really just going to focus on while loops and do while loops. For loops, I'll make a separate short video for that because they really do have two totally different purposes. Okay, so we're going to start off with while loops. A while loop is a block of code that will run. And now, to be really clear, I mean, really what's going on here is let's make a little while loops class. Let's make a public static void main, a collection of strings called args, and there we go. So we're up and running. I like to space this out a little bit. All right. So if we were to say create an integer called a that's equal to 1, I could say if a is equal to 1, then run this little block of code, right? So I could say system.out.println a is and then I'll just print it, okay? So that's what an if block does, right? So an if block simply says if this condition is true, run this thing one time. If I just change this if, and I'll go down to this basic example here. If I simply change this if to a while, it behaves exactly like the if statement, except it keeps you running that block of code until the condition is false. So it'll say is A1, then print, and then print again, and then print again. So it's the exact same as an if statement, except instead of executing once, it executes over and over until the condition is false. So what we would have to do in here is maybe we could say, well, A is less than 5, and then I could print the value of A, and then I could increase it. So A equals A plus 1, and I'm actually going to start writing this in shorthand. So instead I'll say plus equals 1, and what that means is it's saying add 1 and then save. So really logically plus equals, right? It's saying first add the value, then set it equal to. So it's saying increase A by 1, okay? Now this works with any number, right? I could plus equal 5, I could plus equal -2. However, since I'm adding exactly 1, I can just shorten that to even just plus plus. We use it so much that we can just write A plus plus. And I'm going to start using that shorthand more and more now. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to do it. I'm still April 11th here, so I'm going to say save it in my workspace in 0411. I'm going to call this while loops. I've got it as a Java file. I save it. I'm going to right click open CMD and I'm going to Java C, and then I'm going to double check that name. It's while loops.java, no errors. So we Java while loops to run it. And it runs 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when it finally runs with a value of 4, we add 1 to 5. We go back and 5 is not less than 5, so it doesn't run the loop again. So that's really the basics. It's just an if statement, except it repeats, okay? Some common usages, really I'm comparing this to for loops, okay? We're going to do for loops in the next video. While loops are used more for one-time events. Like it's saying, keep them trapped in this loop until they enter the right password. Or keep this loop going until they lose the game. So something will occur that will trigger the loop to stop. That's really when you use a while loop. Or maybe it's you're iterating over something, but you don't know the size or the length. So each time you have to keep checking. You go, do something. Am I done yet? And there's a question mark there. That's what the while loop is for. It has that condition built in. So every time it cycles back, it says, should I keep going? So when you don't know the length of what you're iterating over, or you're looking for a one-time event, that would be when you use a while loop. The only real difference with a do while loop, I'll scroll down here to a do while loop, is it will run once before even checking anything. So this is a common one. A really simple example for a beginner is saying like enter an input, right? And you would say, give me an input first, okay? So for that, we would say do, let's actually create, let's say a string password, okay? And I'm not going to give it a starting value. And I'm going to say do, and then in here, I'm going to ask for a input from the user, and then afterwards I'm going to say while, and then I'm going to check if the password is valid, and if it's not, I'm going to loop back and make them do that again, okay? So right here I'm going to ask for an input, And then here I'm going to check if is input valid. And that's a really easy way to think of why you would use a do-while loop. The only real difference is, regardless of the condition, it does absolutely execute once. And then you could say, now do we need to repeat? Like, did they mess up there? So just, if we're going to ask for an input, just as a review of our scanner class, right? Up at the top, we're going to import from Java Utilities the scanner class. One time, we need to make a scanner object that has abilities to use all the methods from the scanner class. So up at the top, I'm going to create our scanner object. And so here we go. We're going to go a data type scanner thing called keyboard. Now I could stop there, and then on another line, I could say, okay, I'm going to instantiate that. I'm going to set it up. Because really what you're saying is the data type is scanner and we're making keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to go a new thing of scanner type. We passed it, the system's in, and now we're ready to go. So down here I could ask for some input, and I could say password equals, whoops, not scanner, keyboard, so the object, and then dot. And now next gets the next one word string. So I'm looking for whatever they type in, I'm going to take it in as a string. And then here I'll say, you know what, I'll make a string up here, string, like this is the hidden key, is, I don't know, Apple. Okay, so that's the hidden password. And if they enter that, they escape the loop. Otherwise, they're going to have to keep doing it. And so what you'll do here is you'll say, well, I want to check is password equal to Apple. Now, I can't use the equals because this isn't a primitive data type. So remember from the video on strings, we go, is it dot equals to, and then I have a variable hidden key. And so I'm just going to check if that's equal. Now this would say, if it is the hidden password, loop back. So we want the logical opposite of that. So the not is just an exclamation point before. So this says the opposite of, okay? So while they haven't entered the correct password, loop back and ask again. Okay, so let's save this. I already got command open. Let's recompile, no errors. Let's rerun it. I didn't type in any instructions, but let's say the password's banana. Nope, it's orange. What about apple? Boom, done, it worked, okay? So that's kind of a simple example of how you would use a while loop and how you would use a do while loop. Let's look at a couple common mistakes here, okay? Common mistake with the while loop is if you comment this out, this loop is going to keep running forever because we never change the value from 1. And so it'll always be less than 5. So let's save this. Let's recompile it. Okay. And now there was no logical, no programming error, right? Like all these are valid lines of code. However, as soon as I run this, you see, whoa, it's just like, you can see this thing scrolling down, down, down forever over here. So to interrupt that, I could go Control C, or there we go. It took a second. So that's a manual interrupt. And so Control C or Control V, I think both interrupt there. All right. So back over here, that was a common mistake, is people forgetting getting trapped in a forever loop there. Another mistake here is, oh, right. That wasn't the mistake I was thinking of. So another mistake is if you create the variable inside the loop, it doesn't exist for the check, right? So if I go while a is less than 5 and I don't create a until later, that's another common mistake. Another one was remembering scope. If you create a variable a in here, so let's undo that. Let's put a there, and let's say in here I go int b equals 2. And then out here, I try and go system.out.println, and I try and just print the value of b. That's going to cause an error too, because I created that variable inside the loop. And anything you create inside the loop, and you can tell I'm declaring it right here because I said int, so I'm declaring a new variable b inside the loop, then it doesn't exist outside the loop, okay? So that's another common mistake. With the do while loops, just to highlight a really common mistake, the most common I see is people not putting the semicolon here. If you don't put the semicolon here, you just get a little grammar error, a little syntax error. And then the same thing about messing up where you get trapped in a forever loop. Similarly, a common mistake, and this will be the last one I'll mention, is when using a while loop, sometimes, people put the brackets down here, and that's totally common, totally valid. But a mistake that leads to with beginners is often they put a semicolon here after the while condition is true, and then semicolon. And what that does is that says, okay, so while this condition is true, do, and then nothing is the instruction to do, semicolon. And so this is the set of instructions to do over and over while a is less than 5. Well, since you're now never changing the value of a, right? It starts as 1, and you're never changing. I mean, you're literally doing no commands inside the while loop. This loop will trap you forever doing nothing, right? And so that's a common mistake. And if it was the opposite, if you were saying, well, like, a is greater than 5, it'll run this check and the loop won't run, and then it'll end. And since this isn't attached to the loop, it would just run one time as though there was no condition attached. So those semicolons there can also get you a little messed up. Okay, so that's pretty much it for while loops. That was a short video walking you through the basics. I hope you enjoyed it.